Hi, my name is Elle Billing. I am a chronically ill queer femme, and I'm tired. I'm here this episode and every episode to dig at the roots of our collective fatigue, explore ways to direct our care in compassionate and sustainable ways, and to harness creative expression to heal ourselves and to heal our world. Welcome to HORF, Radical Care in a Late Capitalist Hexscape. My guest for this episode is Twin Cities metro-based artist Virginia Townsend, who creates under the moniker Bunnie Rabbitte. Virginia paints from her experience with mental health, illness, disability, and her own unique vision of recovery. Born to parents living with mental illness, Virginia honed her critical thinking skills early by discerning between her parents' hallucinations, illusions, and reality. In her artistic work, Virginia uses this skill to play with concepts of objective truth and perception and how they intertwine in mental health recovery communities. Since 2019, Virginia has been creating art full-time with her current practice supported by MSS, a progressive day program supporting people with disabilities. Living with her own mental illness, she has experienced making art in non-traditional settings. She learned to connect emotion and image in hospital-based occupational therapy programs and continued her journey by painting full-time in adult day programs. Having spent time in inpatient mental health units so frequently, she has a strong sense of community and belonging with individuals frequently hospitalized or so-called revolving door patients and the unique obstacles they face in receiving care. Quiet in person, her voice speaks loudly through her abstract and figurative art. Townsend brings attention to cracks in support services, lack of safe assisted living settings for women and queer identified folks, and well-intentioned policy that may have disastrous effects. She advocates for people most vulnerable to abuse that need 24/7 supports and cannot find settings without sacrificing privacy or choice of whom they reside with. Townsend is a recipient of a fiscal year 2024 Creative Individuals Grant funded by the Minnesota State Arts Board and the National Endowment for the Arts. She's also the grantee of an Arts Midwest 2024 Midwest Awards for Artists with Disabilities. I am excited to have Virginia on the podcast with me today. Hi, Virginia. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Not too bad. It's great to have you on the podcast. I'm excited to have you here today.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, I'm excited to have you here. For our listeners, this is my second interview with a winner of the Midwest Award for Artists with Disabilities for this season of WORF, and I'm really excited to have another one of my fellow artist cohort with me on the podcast today. It's been really fun to reach out and chat with artists in our little elite group of 9. And get to know their art and get to know them. And I'm really happy to have Virginia on the podcast today.
Thank you.
You're in Minnesota, yes?
I am.
Yep, and I'm in North Dakota. So we're like little neighbors.
Yeah, I want to go to North Dakota. I like that idea of just vast land.
Yeah, I like the idea of emptiness. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm on the eastern part of the state. So like you wouldn't be too far. Like once you cross the border, like you would be really close. You could come say hi.
Um,
Actually, I drive through your city on my way to visit my sister. So
oh wow.
you're actually like it's like a several hour drive, but like
Yeah.
you're still probably the closest one to me of all of the other ones.
Okay. Well, we'll have some planning to do.
I guess so. We'll have to go to Oakdale and get duck donuts.
Oh my gosh. First of
Mhm.
all, I don't know what you're talking about, but second of all, I really want to go.
Okay, so my sister used to work in Oakdale,
Hmm.
and it's like a small donut shop. There's like 3 of them in the cities. And they're
Yeah.
like really, really good donuts.
Oh my
I don't know why
gosh.
they're called Duck Donuts. It's the name of the place. But they're like, when I was staying with them one time, he came home from work with like a dozen donuts, and she had made sure that he got enough that were like not that were allergy friendly for me because there's so many
Okay.
flavors of things that I can't eat. And I was like, oh my God. One of it was like a lemonade flavored donut.
No.
Yeah.
That sounds really nice.
And there were strawberry lemonade ones too, but I'm allergic to strawberries. So like I had it was just like a lemon, like they melted in my mouth and it was like, this is a really good donut. Like
Yeah.
I should come visit more often. I mean, like, yes, I love my
Uh,
sister and her family, but also these are really good donuts.
yep. It's hard to find a good donut.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll go visit my sister. I'll swing through and see you. I'll bring you donuts.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Best day
We'll
ever.
have an art date. Yeah.
Yes.
And then you'll have to come up here and visit just the vast emptiness.
Take pictures of
Yeah.
it.
There's really good donuts in Fargo though too. So like I can take
Oh.
you for donuts there. I can take you to see the wood chipper from the movie Fargo.
Oh,
It's in our visitor center. And then the vast
nice.
emptiness of the rest of the
Yes.
state. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Just miles of
The
corn.
the landscape with the beautiful rich colors
Yeah, it's
or gray tone colors. I don't really know. I've never been there.
yeah, it's right now it's brown.
That brown is a good
Yeah,
color
it's
too.
because we're harvesting corn, and the corn, it turns brown before you harvest it. It's
Interesting.
like it's green all summer, and then it, like, has to dry, and so now it's just really brown. Yep,
I like it.
and the leaves are turning it's nice. Fall's my favorite. Summer makes me
Same.
fairly miserable. I can't
Yeah.
regulate my temperature, and I just
Mhm.
am cranky all summer long, so fall is nice.
Yeah, it is, especially now.
So, my first question that I ask all of my guests is how have you received care this week?
Yeah, I love that question. And I'm really fortunate because I receive a lot of services. I'm fortunate to be in Minnesota because they really take care of people in Minnesota.
Mhm.
I grew up in Texas and Texas was different.
Quite different.
It is. It's tough to, I think growing up, I remember seeing a doctor one time,
Oh, wow.
um, till I moved to Minnesota at 17. So yeah, it's a little tough.
Mhm.
But so this week I have seen my therapist who I see twice a week. And during the daytime, during the weekdays, I go to a adult day center called MSS, Midwest Special Services.
Mhm.
And they have a lot of locations, but I go to the Egan one. And it's a place where people with disabilities of all kinds and sorts and different functioning needs and support needs can go and receive staffing during the day. After that programming, I go home and I have my own apartment in a building that's called an ICS building, and I receive services and staffing there too. Not as intensely as at my day program,
Mhm.
but I usually have a couple hours with staff a day, and it's called ICS, which is Integrated Community Supports.
Mhm.
And I try to spend as little time as I can alone. I have trouble being alone, but at certain times, like on the weekends especially, it's difficult for me to have staffing at home. It's always really confused me. Like you can have such intensive services during the 5-day weekdays and
Mhm.
then nothing on the weekend. And I've never really understood how that makes sense.
Something I noticed when I was in education too is like because I worked at a residential school, is we had structure and services for the kids the whole time they were there, and then they'd on the day they would go home, kids would start having meltdowns because the transition was so hard, and they knew they were gonna go back to, like, wherever they went on the weekends, and so the last day of the school week the last half of the last day of the school week, and then the first half of the first day of the week, kids were just all over the place, because of that transition from no structure to structure every single week. was really difficult for them because what they needed was consistency, and it's really hard to provide that when there isn't services on the weekend. And it's not different when we get older either
No, it's not.
because, like, structure is helpful.
It absolutely is. It really can help some people, like, hold it together, and that's interesting you said that about Mondays and Fridays because I, on purpose, have one of my therapy days be a Friday so that I can plan for the weekend, and it could be as small as, like, what to look up on my computer. But if I don't plan for the weekend and feel okay about it, Friday is just an awful day.
Mhm. Yeah, the other time that was the worst was, like, coming back from a vacation, like spring break, Christmas break, Thanksgiving break. Like, that first Monday was always the kids were just excited. It was like they were all happy to see each other, and they would always wanna talk about what they did, but the Tuesday, it was like, "Oh, we got through Monday, this was so easy." The next day was a disaster. Like, that's when the shit would hit the fan, and everybody would have, like, a bunch of trouble, like, behaviors and whatever, and okay, behaviors using quote fingers, all behavior
Yeah.
is communication. They're trying to communicate something to us. They are dysregulated. I wonder why that is. It was just really difficult and always worse after a prolonged break. And so doing what we can to provide ease of transition to and from school was always an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
Like, how do we help them feel, like, safe and secure going back and forth?
And I wonder if you can, with that, like, kinda stark break.
Mhm. Yeah, and it varied from kid to kid too because,
Yeah.
it depended on how well they were embedded in their family and their community too.
Mm.
So I've had a little bit of time to look at some of your art. It's really, quite vibrant. I really like it, and I'm curious about, like, your art practice and how your disability, informs your art, and how does your art influence the way that you see your disability? Like, how do those 2 things play together?
It's a really interesting question that I hadn't really thought much about in the past, but my disability informs my art in, like, these 2, like, kinda opposite ways.
Mhm.
So the first way is that I'll paint on my painting until I am absolutely sure it's done, and I can't put my name on the back if I'm not certain.
Mhm.
And part of being certain is my own opinion, but I also ask a bunch of people around me because I go to that day program. So I'll ask people's opinions of it before I fully make up my mind. And it's this mix of perfectionism and self doubting because I want my work to be outstanding. Like, it's that
Mhm.
perfectionism that creeps in,
Mhm.
and just the sense that I can't judge myself, that my judgment is not trustworthy. And so it's an interesting mix. The other way that my disability can inform my art is that as fast as I can paint, and I do really like paint fast,
Mhm.
a painting in the morning could look completely different at the end of the day. And as fast as I can do that, I can also slow down if I'm triggered by something, usually music that I heard growing up. So if I have this this very annoying problem where if I could be doing just fine. I could
Mhm.
be enjoying myself, talking with people, having a good time, and if I hear any song that I heard growing up, and it doesn't matter the genre, it doesn't matter, like, it could be a sample, it could be someone singing it, I will most likely have a meltdown.
Oh,
And
wow.
what that, like, looks like is I could do the, like, that, like, yell crying where you're, like, trying to explain you're so upset and you're crying and you're talking to somebody and you're so you're so upset that, like, you can't control your voice volume.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so that's, like, that yell crying, just meltdowns, and usually after that, as long as I speak to somebody, it's better in, like, a few minutes, but then
Mhm.
I'm usually so worn out that I need to sleep, and I usually can't paint after that until the next day. Um, So that's how my disability affects my art and informs it. But my art influences really how I view myself in this way that I just find really beautiful. Because in the past, like when I explain to doctors or therapists, because I've seen every doctor, I've seen every therapist, I've been to rehab like 3 to 5 times, I can't remember. Um,
Mhm.
and every time I would talk to a professional, I always heard this response of, "Oh, you have so much potential. You'll eventually be independent. You'll be successful. Like, just work hard at it." And through my art career, which started in a day services program, it didn't start on my own.
Mhm.
And through doing that, I've learned that like half of that statement was right. And I do have a lot of potential. I have this crazy, or I shouldn't say crazy, but I have this strong ambition that
Mhm.
does not quit. I will apply for everything, be rejected for everything, and apply the next year. And I have this drive to learn everything I can about what interests me so that I can do it to the best of my ability. Because I don't like competition, but I am in competition with myself. And I
Mhm.
always want to win with myself.
Yeah.
So my art has really taught me that if I have like total independence, which is like in the layperson definition, like no professional supports, I wouldn't survive life. I need my supports, I need my day supports, and I can need that and be successful with my art.
I think you hit on something really important there. One, independence is overrated.
Absolutely.
And it can be dangerous. Like, it's dangerous for
Absolutely.
some it's harmful for some people. And I was on the other side of that equation as a teacher where we are I started in the elementary program and then moved up to secondary where we help students write their post-secondary transition plans, and there's a lot of emphasis on independence. And we start writing transition plans when they're 14.
Mm.
So we want them to start thinking about their post-secondary transition and their career and how they're going to spend their post-high school life when they're 14 years old. I don't know about you, but when I was going through puberty, what I was thinking about in 10 years was very fantastical. Like it wasn't rooted in reality. And I certainly, even if I had had some supports to like build toward that, and I did based on the family that I grew up in the school that I had, but like it wasn't really realistic. And I think that's asking a lot of kids and teenagers. And I think for some of us, day programs exist for a reason. You know, people can be embedded in the community and still need a lot of support. And I think the focus on independent is missing the mark for a lot of people. And it doesn't mean that we can't do cool things and accomplish things and be successful.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I also think that, and I could be wrong about this, but this is kind of my experience, is that the more you move away from services, especially residential services, the more kind of incentives you have in the framework. It's just this idea of living in your own space is like the ideal. And I think maybe the root of that is some fantastical idea that disabled people can recover and not be disabled, which is a really not great way to think if they can't. And then I also think it's rooted in finances. When I lived in an assisted living, that home was getting $247,000 a year to assist me. And I moved out into an ICS facility, and I always read the papers I get from the county with what everybody's being paid because I can get mad about it. But and the ICS I live in is getting $117,000 a year. So it's like every level you step down, it's less money that Medicaid is paying for. And I understand the idea of cutting out waste, but whenever anybody cuts out waste, they're cutting the wrong things.
Mm,
they're cutting things they know nothing about.
right. They see line items and we see people.
Absolutely. And I can't stress this enough. Yeah, some people with disabilities can improve. Great. Some people with disabilities make it to a point where they don't consider themselves, or doctors wouldn't consider them disabled. Great. Some people stay disabled. Some people get worse.
Mhm.
I just would wish that people would understand that kind of spectrum, because it's like you said, it's dangerous to give somebody less support than they need
Mhm.
results in a life turned upside down.
You started painting in a day program. That's how you started. So, how does your art, like, communicate about, like, your inner world or what it is that you're experiencing? Is that why you started painting?
When I realized that I needed somewhere to go every day so that I could both socialize and feel like I had a purpose in this world, because when you're somebody who struggles to work, the narrative around what you can do to have purpose is not really taught. It's kind of uncharted territory, because if you can't work, it's like this idea of like, well, what can you do? You know?
It's that capitalist
Absolutely.
ableism. It's all that big messy knot. Yep. That goes along right with that independent living thing. They're all connected.
They really are. And so I wanted to go to a day program, and I'd never been to one before, but I wanted to go to one where I could do art, because in the past, like kind of off and on, I would dabble in painting, and I do it in that way where like you're sitting on the floor and you have like your limited paints around you.
Mhm.
And it's very informal, but it was an interest of mine. And so with my paintings, I kind of went through stages. There were landscapes, there were figure drawings, and I kind of landed on abstract art. And if you look at my current body of work, some of my paintings look similar to each other,
Mhm.
like almost like reiterations of themselves. And then some look completely different. And this is because whenever there's a big change in my life, or a trauma, or even something as small as like my seat location changing, I can get really disoriented, so
Mhm.
much that it feels like I'm like starting over and I can't remember how to paint. Like I won't be able, like I'll sit down with I paint on wood panels, and I'll sit down with a wood panel, I'll look at my brushes, and I'm like, wait, what? Like
Mhm.
how do I do this again? And so I won't remember how to start. I won't remember like what to do after I start, or like how to know if I finished the painting. I'll notice that like it's harder to talk to the people I'm around, even if I know them. And I get annoyed just like trying to hold a conversation that's more than pleasantries, because I
Mhm.
just feel so different. And I think this is why there are shifts in my entire body of work.
Mhm.
It is a thing that happens. And I think that people may be able to see it when they look at my work, but I still have that like veil of privacy about why it happens, you know?
Mhm.
Like you couldn't tell from looking at my work why it happens, but you can see that it happens.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you mentioned the shifts happen if you've experienced a trauma or if something changes in your environment. What is something that you wish that folks who aren't disabled or who don't have, mental illness knew or understood about PTSD and trauma disorders?
Okay, get ready, because I have a list.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's why we have HORF.
oh my gosh. So, okay, the first thing is I wish so much that people would understand how trauma, whether it's like a short term or long term traumas, how they show up in people's behaviors and attitudes and abilities to like regulate themselves. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little bitter that horrific trauma experiences seem to be a common plot point. in movies currently.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah, it's awful.
Right?
Absolutely awful. And yet, when people are faced with other people who in real life have experienced even like similar things, just awful, and they struggle with those lasting effects, the triggers that they have are treated as if they're dislikes or preferences.
Mhm.
And reducing those triggers is like, it's just too much effort. The person is viewed as being too much, and even if it makes the space inaccessible for somebody, it's just the idea is like, oh, you dislike this. Well, we can't control everything. And even if it's like one specific thing, and I found that in my experience, I will talk about older music. What I realize people are hearing is I don't like music,
Mhm.
which is absolutely not it at all. And so like people with lasting effects from trauma, they can appear needy or demanding of reassurance. But it's like you said, behavior is communication. And it's often because they had their needs neglected by supports who,
Mhm.
instead of being reliable, were inconsistent. An example of that for me is that I can call often or email often.
Mhm.
So, like, if I call a company or if I'm calling the county, you know,
Mhm.
I can call them every few hours and I don't leave messages because that would be too much. But it's not that I'm angry or frustrated, it's that I'm sitting with my question, which is unanswerable unless I talk to the person I need to talk to, and sitting with that not knowing and knowing that somebody has the answer feels so intolerable. And if I could figure it out myself, I definitely would. I'm
Mhm.
such a fan of searching for stuff. But in situations where I'm waiting for a response, I'll frequently call because my mindset is, well, what if they answer this time? What if they're sitting at their desk right now and they would answer the phone if I call? And then with that thought, I have to call
Yep.
because I have to take that chance. Because if I, quote unquote win, if I'm right, if they do answer, then I can stop being anxious. And my caddy waiver manager is so amazing. She gets this about me and she tells me that if I'm anxious, I can call her as many times as I need, even on the weekend, could be 10 times in a day. Doesn't she understands? Because if she's busy or on a home visit, her phone is on silent or it's in her car. And
Mhm.
she gets that it's a self-regulating thing,
Mhm.
and others usually do not get that. And then I think the last thing I'll say, and I could talk about this for the end of time, but the last thing I'll say on that question is, frequently, like, people with trauma who didn't learn self-regulation as kids, and this could be people who didn't learn it growing up and then had a trauma later in life.
Mhm.
Like you see that with military, or you see, just trauma can happen to so many people. And if they don't have the self regulation skills, they usually, in my experience for me and seeing others, they depend on outward behaviors to regulate.
Mhm.
So it can come off as like demanding, it can come off as emotional, as having meltdowns, which are actually can be a form of self regulation. But like in my experience, coming off as demanding, it's really the exact opposite. Like, I know when people are starting to think I'm annoying, and I feel shame about it. Like when I'm on that seventh call, like I feel like a terrible person. But I mean, it feels like I don't have another option. Like, if I'm conscious in the moment, I don't know any other way to relieve the pressure and calm my anxiety.
Yeah. My partner was just recently posted something on social media about all the micro shame that goes with ADHD.
Mm,
And it's like, we also don't want to be doing what we are doing.
yeah.
We are fully aware of how we are inconveniencing and annoying other people. Like, we don't want our brain to work or not work the way that it does. We're doing the best we can. Trust me.
Yeah, no,
Like, there's tons of,
absolutely.
yeah, there's lot. And I think that's one of the things, at least for, I think, well, at least the neurodivergencies that I have experience with both myself and with the people in my close circle is just like the shame that goes along with doing what we know we need to regulate or to get
Yeah.
information or to get through the day, knowing that, like, oh, I know this is like driving people crazy, but I'm doing the best I can. And if you just help me with this one thing, trust me, it'll be better after this.
Absolutely. Like, I my first day program was different than this one, and I would have this thing where, like, if a staff person would come in, and if anything different, if they seemed different in any way, if they were quieter, if their face didn't look the same, I felt compelled to email them and with just one question. It was, "Is everything okay?"
Mhm.
And I wasn't asking about, like, I don't need to know what's going on with them. I don't need to, know any personal details. Like, really, all I'm looking for is a yes. That's it. And I think if you don't understand where someone's coming from, that might be annoying. But at the same time, I feel like it's not asking for much.
Yeah. Like assessing the temperature of the room. Like, is
Absolutely.
everyone good? No.
Yeah. Is anything bad happening?
Do I need to fix something?
Oh my gosh, oh, whenever anybody seems upset, my brain
Yeah.
is like, "Okay, your turn. Fix it.
Yeah, yeah, that's
You're in charge. You're in
it's
charge
an
of everybody. You have to regulate everybody's emotions."
oh, I don't know what that's like at all. Hmm. Oh, wait. Yeah. Yes, I do.
Yeah. Can we go I think we went over the how does PTSD impact and then go to the sleep question?
Yeah, sure.
I appreciate that, sorry.
You wanna talk about how PTSD impacts your day-to-day life?
Yeah, I think people aren't used to maybe seeing or recognizing when PTSD is a daily struggle for people, and especially when it's disabling.
You had said something earlier about how, like, trauma is, like, glamorized almost because there's so many TV shows and movies that use major trauma as a plot point, and I think that might be part of it because we have a very limited view of what PTSD looks like,
Absolutely.
and partly because we think of PTSD as something that happens to soldiers or people who have a single traumatic, like, one single traumatic event, and I think there's a
Mhm.
lot that can be done to sort of educate about complex long-term trauma. But how that manifests in people's daily lives is still something people don't understand. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I do blame media because there's no, you'll see a dramatized movie talking about somebody who has this just enormous trauma happen to them, and maybe it's ongoing, maybe it's not. And then the end of the movie is the person being rescued, or the end of and it never goes past that. And
Mhm.
that bothers me because, the effects of trauma, I think the layperson or someone who doesn't have experience with that could name maybe like two, like flashbacks.
Anxiety, insomnia.
And I also think that it's a failing of the medical industry, society, whatever you want to call it, because for trauma, as far as I know, it's the diagnosis is PTSD, like you mentioned, complex PTSD. And I think that's a very valuable framework. And if you look up complex PTSD, you can see what kind of long term effects can live with a person. And complex PTSD isn't technically a diagnosis.
Yeah.
And I think it's harmful to put everybody who has PTSD, because like one trauma PTSD tends to go away within 6 months. Complex PTSD can affect who you are as a human.
Mhm.
And so, like, okay, for me, with my symptoms, with my difficulties, I have a lot of triggers and I have a lot of fears. If I hear music that I heard growing up, I have a meltdown. If
Mhm.
I see TV that I saw growing up, I have a meltdown. If I hear jingles from commercials when I was growing up, meltdown. I also have trouble, even with current media, like current movies, current shows, when they flash back to like a year before the year 2000.
Mhm.
Um, I can't deal. I will try because I wanna watch the show, and then I just start to feel myself get angrier and angrier, and it's almost disconnected from what I'm watching, but I've learned to tell that it is very connected.
Mhm.
I can't watch black and white. TV shows or movies, even if they're current, because the visual, if I'm alone for more than an hour or two, I start to feel trapped where I am. And like, not in the existential way of feeling trapped, but in a way where it feels like I'm not allowed to leave. And like it's against the rules, quote
Mhm.
unquote. And during these times, I have a dog who is the most amazing thing in my life. And during those times, which often happen on the weekend, sometimes I feel it's hard not to feel shame, especially when it comes to pets. But I'll usually have to use a diaper with him
Mhm.
because it feels like being outside isn't an option. But having a pet and taking care of a pet and loving a pet and a pet loving you, it helps me feel like when I do feel like I'm confined
Mhm.
within the walls I'm in, it feels better knowing that my dog is with me.
Mhm.
Like, oh, he's trapped here too. We can be trapped here together. And but what does, and this is why I need services, right? This
Yep.
is why I
Yep.
need staff at home. So, and he's lived with me in assisted living before, but because what breaks it is like it's going outside. Because if I'm able to go outside, my brain just shifts. It's just when I'm alone to not it's not motivation. It's when I'm alone to like understand that I'm allowed to leave through the door.
Mhm.
It doesn't happen, so I just have staff intervene if I'm able to. I also like yelp and flinch at many unexpected sounds.
Mhm.
The most annoying to me is when a door closes. I will be like, oh, and
Mhm.
I'm embarrassed that I'm so wildly hyper alert. Bubble wrap being popped, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Also, being in grocery stores is hard. Any kind of store, if they're playing old music.
Mhm.
Same thing for medical lobbies. You'd be surprised. Being in a medical cab, if the driver is playing music before the year 2000. In my purse, I always have two sets of headphones on me. One is like the emergency headphones, which are noise canceling. I use them in emergency situations where the
Mhm.
music is loud because I dislike having noise canceling on. It makes me feel like I can't monitor my surroundings. So I also have a pair of headphones that are those like bone conduction ones,
Mhm.
and they allow me to hear my surroundings, but they're able to drown out like softer old music, like if it was coming from, a grocery store or the lobby of my dentist, that kind of
Mhm.
thing.
That's a lot.
It's annoying, but I'm trying to learn to like not even think of it as annoying. It's not annoying. It's how my brain can hold itself together. My brain is holding itself together with a whole lot of tape.
Yeah, it's working really hard.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
working really hard. And I think feeling annoyed about it is my way of appeasing the way society can view it. I think
Mhm.
it's like an internalization of like, "Oh, yeah, this is so annoying that I have this trigger." Like, actually, it's not, it's just painful.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I don't have
It's
anything to
okay.
add to that.
That is just fine.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. Did
Mhm.
you wanna take a few minutes to talk about your how sleep messes with your creativity?
Absolutely.
'Cause I think that's really I think that's really relatable to a lot of us. Sleep is something a lot of us are chasing, like quality sleep.
Yeah, I definitely have experience with that. So I've been diagnosed with both narcolepsy and idiopathic hypersomnia. I was diagnosed with narcolepsy back when idiopathic hypersomnia didn't have any FDA treatment.
Mhm.
So doctors would diagnose narcolepsy so that your insurance would pay for treatment.
Yep.
And I have been through the ringer with trying to find meds that work. And I eventually saw a sleep medicine doctor who he informed me that sometimes when people have a lot of trauma, they can have these episodes of sleep attacks that really mirror narcolepsy. And in his experience, when people have large amounts of trauma And if they don't respond well to the medication, like stimulants, like they may work for a week and then stop, and then you're back trying to switch. And granted, you can become tolerant of stimulants, but in his experience, that can indicate dissociation and this idea that you are having these sleep attacks when it's really your brain like shutting down real quick and having that experience of dissociation because like you said, like my brain works harder than a brain can work without a break like
Mhm.
that. So yeah, my sleep schedule is also based on my triggers. So it's been pretty unique for a few years now. I do take this like heavy sleep med that's impossible to stay awake through, and I love it. And on a good day, I'll take it at 4 p.m.
Mhm.
And on a bad day, I'll take it at 3 because I just want the day to be over with. And
Mhm.
then ideally, I would wake up at 4 p.m., but, or sorry, 4 a.m. Ideally, I would wake up at 4 a.m., but often it's between 2 and 4
Mhm.
a.m. And I developed a sleep schedule because I have this trauma response where I feel a sense of dread and doom at a certain time of day, usually between like 3 and 7 p.m. Because for me, that would be the time when school's ended, you're at home, but you're not unconscious asleep yet.
Mhm.
So, when I was in college to deal with those feelings of like just the most horrendous, like feel like you're just the world is gonna collapse on you, I would do these little things like take the bus to Walgreens and buy shampoo during that time. And then the next day, I would take the bus to Walgreens and buy conditioner. You know, like
Mhm.
I would do anything I could to be out because as long as I'm out or asleep, it's okay. But if I'm at home and awake during those times, is when it just feels intolerable. So the result of my sleep schedule is that I've actually only been to one art opening ever because a lot of events will take place in the
During the
evenings.
evenings, yeah.
Yeah, and last year I was awarded Best in Show for one of my paintings at Artability, and they told me. And for the closing ceremonies, they were like giving out awards, and they let me know, and I couldn't go. It was I there's no way I would have been able to stay up that late, so I just imagined what it would be like. This year, I am feeling up to challenging myself. And I think that feeling up to challenging yourself is really important
Yes.
because I feel like people shouldn't challenge themselves because they feel they have to. I think you can hurt yourself that way. This year, I want to challenge myself, and I feel like I can succeed by attending. There's a donor event on the 24th, October 24th, and it's for Artability, and I'll be giving a speech, which I've written. So, pressure's off a little bit.
Mhm.
So I've been working myself up to staying up later, and staying up that late is still something I would probably only do like once every 6 months.
Yeah.
But, even if I do that, that's way better than the last 7, 8 years.
That's, like, a really cool, like, measurable goal to work yourself up towards, and for a really good reason too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all that. Thanks for being here.
No, thank you.
We're out of time.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's great. We had a wonderful conversation. We didn't get to talk about, like, the thing that we talked about on the phone.
Oh, I know. I know you had sent me that list of questions, and the last question on that list I thought was really beautiful.
Oh, that's right. Let's do that one and then we'll go. So
Yeah,
what is one true thing you have learned from your creative practice?
I love this question. And my answer is that the one true thing I've learned from my creative practice is that I can be skilled at something and successful at something while receiving direct support. Like I can manage my career and have 24/7 staffing too. And this is true for me because every person with a disability is unique, but I don't have to give up one for the other. I don't have to not be successful to have 24/7 staffing. I don't have to not live in a residential setting with services to be successful, and they
Mhm.
can go together just fine. They don't conflict.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was so
Yeah,
nice.
where can people go to find you on socials or the internet or wherever?
Well, luckily, my SEO is working now.
Woohoo!
And yeah, so if you type my name into Google, the first result will be my website. So
Awesome.
Virginia Townsend. Virginia has three I's in it, surprisingly. So Virginia, and then my last name Townsend .com.
Perfect.
And yeah, that really shows. I have my figure drawings and my abstract art there, as well as a statement, a bio, and just kind of what I'm all about.
Awesome. I will put that in the show notes so everyone can find
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It means a lot. I really care about this stuff.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Whorf. To get the complete show notes and all the links mentioned on today's episode, or to get a full transcript of the episode, visit whorfpodcast.com. Join the blessed herd of St. Winkus. By signing up for our newsletter, you can get Whorf episodes delivered directly to your inbox. What's more, you get invitations to our monthly coffee and biscuits chat, where you get to hang out with Ricky and Elle, talk about the show, and connect on the topics that mean the most to you. You can sign up for that at whorfpodcast.com. If you become a patron for only $3 a month, you can support the creation of this podcast, help pay my editor, and join a community of caregivers out here just doing our best. Thank you again for joining me, Elle Billing, the chronically ill queer femme who is very tired, on this episode of Whorf. Until next time, be excellent to each other. Whorf is hosted by Elle Billing at Ellen Wink. Audio editing by Ricky Cummings at Ricky Poo. Music composed by Ricky Cummings. Whorf is a production of Ellen Wink Art Studio LLC, all rights reserved. Whorf can be found on all social media platforms at Whorf Podcast, at HOORF Podcast.
It's hard to find a good donut.